Hey there, thank you very much for joining me today. I am diving back into the Cubase 14 score editor. I've been using it more and getting more familiar with its features coming from a Dorico standpoint. So if you're somebody who uses Dorico and you maybe are interested in getting into using the score editor, it was hugely upgraded, in my view, an upgrade, but certainly updated, everyone would agree, from Cubase 13 into something that looks and feels a bit more like Dorico. And today I want to talk about how you can build expression maps for this, because learning to operate in the score editor to write notes and write your music is one thing, but getting it to trigger the right samples in your sample libraries for legato or for marcato or things like this is also key to really doing the composing in the score editor. I'm going to go over how you can do that, how you set up the different expression maps, how you configure them, some of the caveats that I've learned. In the interim, or over the process of the video, I'm also going to demonstrate a little bit how I actually compose in the score editor, and also how you can export stuff to Dorico and back into Cubase, because I think there's that integration workflow is so key and so useful to so many people. All right, so I want to actually just double check here that I have my video going correctly. Not seeing it in the right place. So the first thing we're going to do is, let me actually just make sure that I am on the line. All right, there I am. Okay. So I'm unfortunately not able to see the chat right now with my video, and I don't really want to get hugely distracted by that. So I'm just going to go ahead and move on with the demo. So here I've got a basic MIDI event in Cubase. I've got Cubase 14 open. And so I'll just kind of walk through the very basics of how you might get started here. I'm just going to hold Option down and draw in, a couple of measures of music like this. Go ahead with that MIDI selected, that MIDI part selected, you can go up here to the Open Score Editor. You can hit Command R, and it's going to open it up down here in the lower zone. You can also expand this to a larger window. Let me get rid of these windows here so that it's a little clearer. So you can have this large window, but a lot of this information over here on the left is available in the smaller version anyway. Let's go ahead and just see how that looks. You've got these two tabs in the lower area here, Track and Editor. And so if you're looking at the track information, that's what's selected in your project window. If you're looking at editor, that's actually for the editor down here. So you do have quite a lot of control here over stuff that's related to the editor in the lower zone here. Okay, so the next thing to kind of be aware of is some of the differences between inputting music here in the score editor versus inputting notes in Dorico. So let's say that I wanted to start inputting notes here. You can't just select that and go into note input mode. But what you can do is you can move the cursor around. You can actually see the cursor that's moving in the project window and this little green line down here in the score editor are moving to the same place. And this is based on whatever your quantize is, right? So if I set my quantize to 1, then you'll see that it jumps around by measure, and it's kind of synced with this quantize up here. So that's how you do it. If you wanted to go ahead and input some quarter notes, you can select quarter notes. I might want to change my quantize to quarter notes, and then my preferred way to do this is to go into step input, and I'll just type in sorry, I need to go ahead and select that. Got this enabled, and go ahead and you can see the notes coming in right here. Now there are some really distracting things about working in the score editor. I don't like the way that this note appears, and if I accidentally click somewhere it writes a note. So I tend to always want to choose the object selection tool, or I just hit the 1 key. So that's how I generally input music, but let's go to an example that I've input and talk about articulations. So in this passage I've got some marcatos, I've got a little legato between these two notes here, and I've also got some tenutos, and even this note here is actually natural. So we want to talk about how do we get these to play the appropriate tag, or sorry, not tag, but articulation. And the way that you're going to get this to happen is essentially to set up an expression map, and it's very different setting up an expression map in Cubase than it is in Dorico. The same essential principles are in play, and I will just remind you that unfortunately I can't from my current view see the chat and discussion, so I'm not going to be able to answer questions directly in this one, but I appreciate everybody if they are leaving comments. So in essence, you still want to know, okay, what are the articulations you're using and what are their key switches in your instrument? Those are the two things you need to know. And then it's just that you put them into the software a little differently in the Cubase score editor. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to go down here and click on track. And up here I'm going to see an expression maps area, and that's because this track, of course, is included or selected. Now I've already created an expression map here for this Berlin clarinet, and I've also created it around the articulations I'm using: marcato, legato, tenuto, and then natural, right? And I've named them as such. But let's look at how we could go ahead and create this from scratch. You basically just hit the plus, this teeny weeny little plus button. I don't know why they make it so small. I'll just call this demo. And let's say I wanted to add a natural. I would just type that. Whatever you type under name is completely arbitrary. It doesn't matter. It's just for you to know what's going on. Okay. And then you can override with the remote switch here if you wanted to. Let's say marcato was triggered by the key switch C0 in your player, but you actually wanted to trigger it with C-1 because you wanted to only use those very low octaves. You can actually set these remotes to key switches that will override whatever is happening, whatever's configured in your sound library, which is a nice feature. I'm not going to use that here. Instead, I'm going to look at my instrument and I'm going to say, okay, well, I've got a bunch of marcato notes here. I want to make sure I'm firing off the marcato sample. So I've got a marcato short sample here. It's on channel 1 and it is the key switch D0. So for marcato, I'm going to go ahead and make sure channel 1 is set right there. And I'm going to set a note on to the key switch, which is D0. All right. Now, if I go ahead and change the expression map, generally you'll see no map there, but you can select the one that you just made. Now what you'll notice is that when let's make sure that that is indeed set up correctly. Marcato is doing that, yes, yes. Okay. So this has been a little buggy. Sometimes it'll recognize that this is marcato. Sometimes I have to actually go in here and set the articulations. But if the articulation here, this articulation option in the lower area is not giving me any choices, it's because the expression map has not been really enabled correctly. Let's find out why that is. Because as you'll see for this one, if I have this one selected, sorry, this was my original that I had done just before the video. You'll notice, we should be noticing, I'm not really frustrated that it's throwing this problem up right now. as I'm trying to solve this. It's crazy that it's not. This is definitely a bug, and I apologize for kind of wasting time on this. I'm going to go ahead and try and update this by setting the channel to 0 and the key switch to C#0 for sustains. Sometimes just updating these things is all that's really needed. Maybe even switching to no map and then back to demo. Let's see if that works here. No, it does not seem to work. And it's very strange because in my preparation for this video, I didn't have any problems at all with this. It was very, very fluid. So sometimes I value the fact that, there it is. Okay. I guess I have to have an actual note selected. So sometimes it's really valuable actually for me to run into these problems while I'm on the video with you, because I know that at home many of you are also running into these frustrations. You have to have the note selected, okay? And then what you'll notice now is that notes have actually taken the articulations which I had added using these buttons up here before even adding the expression, and now for each selected note it's actually correlated to the correct articulation in this articulations area. And what you'll notice is that as I select these notes, that these up here are going to trigger. So you'll see that they become highlighted as I trigger different kinds. So this is a legato note, which currently right now has no articulation, and I'll explain that in just a minute. But if I select the tenuto, it goes to the portato, which is what I configured. This one will go to natural, and this one goes to marcato. And if I play them back, you actually can see it jumping around here in the instrument. So the expression map is working correctly, and Cubase is recognizing that I've put articulation markings in my score editor and it's correlating those. But if at any point I wanted to change them, I could change them to one of the others. This is going to be a drop down of whatever's available in my expression map. Now, an important thing to understand here, or a question that comes up right away, is why is this one here with a slur on it not recognized as legato? And this is a current limitation, but this is the workaround. The workaround is that things only show up in this drop-down box if in the expression map they are an attribute. If they are direction-based articulations, they do not show up here. So an attribute is an expression that you place on a note like staccato, and it only belongs to that note. Direction would be something more like legato or maybe tremolo, where you're intending that your notation remains active until it's changed to something else. Now, if I change legato to a direction, or as from direction to an attribute, you'll see it show up in that area. So what I'm going to do now is go to, I guess, expression map setup, and I've got legato here, and you'll see that legato is set to direction. I'm just going to change it to attribute, close that up, and now we see that for these notes down here, it's not selected in my expression map. Go to track tab, expression map, make sure that it's the one that is selected. Go in there to that, make sure legato is set as attribute. So there's definitely some bugs here about how the expression maps are being sort of interpreted and understood correctly. Now you see legato in there. I guess you just have to click around a little bit to really refresh its memory. But if I were to go ahead and select this note now, I can choose legato, and we'll see that as we play through, we'll see all of these switch around now, including that legato, right? So that's the essence of how you set up an expression map to work with an instrument in the Cubase score editor. And you can also create combined, so that combined articulations, let's say that you have a tremolo or a trill, let's say a trill, and you have a minor third trill or a major second trill. You've got different trills you want to be targeting. Let me show you kind of how you go about setting that sort of thing up, because that's extremely helpful. Again, in the expression map editor, you've got multiple columns here for the articulations. So you can create multiple legatos, for example, and set a secondary articulation for that particular articulation, and then you can wind up having that be triggering a rather specific sample, like a minor second trill. So it's going to trill in general, but it's playing the minor second interval. You do have that flexibility. Let me just see here if anything's coming up. So not yet. So oh, I see. Now I can see myself on the video. Thank goodness. I guess it was also Google today that is a bit unpredictable. So let's just take the last couple of minutes here and export this. So if I want to export, as I often do, I've got this written here, and let's say that I wanted to go in to Dorico to either print this out as a part for an instrumentalist, or I wanted to work with some of Dorico's more advanced features. You can actually, after selecting the MIDI there, you can actually now do export, and you can export a Dorico project. And I'm going to do that here. I'm going to put this in as demo. And then in Dorico, I can actually open it up. Goodness me, there's definitely some weird things going on today on my computer, so I really apologize for that. Let's go into Dorico and click on Demo. And this is a pretty good rendition of what was in that score editor, right? So, you know, this is what is in Cubase. All the marcatos, all the rests, everything's been preserved very effectively. So I can work with everything here. And if I wanted to, I could even go a step further, and I can actually export the expression map from Cubase and sort of import it into Dorico. It still requires a little bit of tweaking, but it can save time, especially on a really convoluted or complex map. So let me show you very quickly how that would look. If you come up to the expression map window here, you can actually click Save, and then you can save it. I've already saved a version of it here, but you just click where you want to save it. And then over in Dorico, you can go up to the expression maps window, and you can click on this Import Cubase Expression Map. And I've already done it, and the one that I wound up with, let's see, was, I'm not sure why the windows keep closing on me there. And it's a little frustrating that it's not working more efficiently. Let me see if it's just a matter of having too many things open at the same time. So far, my experience with this actually has been pretty reliable, so it's just really unfortunate that on my computer today, things are a little buggy. You know, obviously when I click import, it's supposed to open up a window, and it's not opening a window. But what it does when you import the Cubase expression map is it'll create all of these values right here. So, you know, if this was the expression map, something like this, I would see the marcato and the legato and the tenuto, the items that were in the Cubase expression map. It would import any of the channel switches or CC values, anything into this. I just might have to go through and make a few tweaks because some information is a little differently the way it's handled in Cubase than in Dorico. But for a long expression map like this, it can be a real time saver. Unfortunately, going from Dorico back to Cubase is not quite as flexible, so I think what you're probably going to find yourself wanting to do is work in Cubase if you're really needing to work in Cubase. Work in Dorico if you really need to work in Dorico. If you need to get your stuff from Dorico back into Cubase, I'm hoping that Cubase will have a better import feature down the road. But currently, that's not really set up for that. But going from Cubase into Dorico, very straightforward. And I think the idea there is that a lot of people might do their scoring, their music making in Cubase, and that the reason they put it in Dorico is to prepare parts for a live performance, which makes a lot of sense. I think it's much less common that people do what I do, which is compose in Dorico. It's because I like composing in notation and then bringing it into Cubase. I think that's less common. If you do want to follow that path and you are new to my channel, I would definitely recommend looking into my channel switching videos. I've done a number of videos on channel switching, and I demonstrate how I do this very efficiently, how you can actually change from key switching to channel switching in order to facilitate getting an export from Dorico into Cubase very easily. So if you have any questions about that, thank you very much. Hello, Greece, and hello, Montreal. Thanks, guys, so much for joining me today. I hope that you guys got a lot out of this video. I'm sorry that there were some technical issues with the software earlier. I still hope that you came away from this understanding how to write your own expression maps and how to apply them in Cubase, and then also understand that there are some avenues for getting that content back into Dorico if you want to in order to work in your Dorico workflow. If you have questions, please do post them in the comments, and I will see you guys all on Friday. All right, take care. Bye.